lovelies, it's Margaret, and it's time to nerd out about the Raven Cycle. In the month of November, I read all 4 of these lovely books, and I have to say, Maggie Stiefvater did not disappoint. Here, I'm gonna put these here. Don't fall. Don't fall. Don't you. I'm gonna put the owl up here so you don't. I actually participated in Miss Emma Reads a Lot's Raven Cycle read-along over the month of November. I will link down below in the description box so that you can go check out her channel because she's really sweet and she has really great book recommendations. I was already a fan of Maggie Stiefvater when I started these books. I read her Wolves of Mercy Fall series. I got the name right, I think. I'm not entirely sure, but Shiver, Linger, Forever, Sinner. I read those. I read the Scorpio Races, which is in like my top 10 books of all time. Now, I'm gonna try and structure this. I'm gonna talk about the series in general, and give you kind of some of my thoughts on it and try and be a little non-spoilery, and then I will wave goodbye to those of you who have not read these books, and I will talk about some of my more spoilery things that I want to talk about. As a whole, I love this series. I'm gonna have to take these down. I gave the Raven Boys 4 stars. I don't remember why it didn't get 5 stars. I had a good reason. But I can't remember what it was. I gave the Dream Thieves 5 stars. I really felt like the plot picked up in this one. I felt like this one was like one of those, like, it was just difficult to put down. Very hard. I managed it, but it was difficult. I gave Blue Lily Lily Blue 5 stars. This one was my favorite in the entire series, mostly just because it had my favorite characters. They had their best moments, I feel, in this book. I gave the Raven King 4 stars. I'm not gonna go into why I gave it 4 stars. It's for 2 reasons, and they're both very spoilery reasons. So I don't want to go into that at this point in the video, but if you are interested and you have read them or you don't mind being spoiled, just stick around until we get to the spoilery section and I will discuss what bugged me. I mentioned this in my November wrap-up, but Maggie Stiefvater, she just has such fantastic world building. You don't have to ask a lot of questions. You're not sitting there wondering, what does this world look like? It is, and the characters just are. She does a fantastic job of giving you these fleshed out characters who are not necessarily meant to be like examples, except of real people. And there are parts of all of the characters in this book that you can admire. There are also parts of all the characters in these books that you kind of go, that's not cool. They're real. They're like real people in real life, and I really do enjoy that. They're not perfect, they're flawed, and that just makes them so enjoyable to read because you don't quite know all the time how they're going to react to something, because you could react, one person can react completely differently to something happening depending on where they are at the moment. I really liked the setting. It was in rural Virginia. It was in the real world, but it was the real world with like different strains of magic in it. I liked how the magic wove through the world and influenced the world without actually like overpowering it and determining how the world worked, if that makes sense. I have to say, like, it was a very compelling plot. Like, you were always wondering what was going to happen. Some stuff was like obvious because some stuff is always obvious. There definitely was a point of like no return. I didn't hit the point of no self-control until I got to Blue Lily Lily Blue, and I should not have read that book in 2 days because I was supposed to be doing NaNoWriMo, but I did read that book in 2 days because I was avoiding doing NaNoWriMo. And then like I think I had to take a break before I could read The Raven King, but that wasn't because I wanted to. That was because I was trying to get caught up on NaNoWriMo, and then I realized it wasn't happening, so I was like, let's read a book! Okay, so that is it for my like overarching things that I liked about this series. If you have not read the series, you should go bye-bye. Bye. We'll give you a minute to leave. If you don't mind being spoiled or you have read the series, you can keep listening. I'm pretty sure that I have adopted 5 more fictional characters, as if I did not already have enough fictional characters that I have adopted with my comic book characters that are currently my children. Gansey took 2 pages. Gansey is one of my favorites. Blue and Gansey were my favorite characters. I read this series at a time when my car was giving me car trouble. Every time that freaking Camaro broke down on Gansey, I was like, oh, such a mood. I feel you, man. And I don't have an Adam Parrish that I can be like, hey man, my car's broke, help. Like, I have to call my dad, and then we have to get it towed, and then we have to have a mechanic work on it. Like, it cost me a lot of money. I just was like, I would not mind being Gansey right now. It frustrated me so much when, like, Adam equated all of Gansey wanting to help him with pity, and I understand why he did that. That, like, the idea of someone wanting to help you just because you're important to them. He obviously didn't grow up in an environment where that was something that was a thing. Like, when people want to help you, it doesn't necessarily mean that they pity you. His pride, he needed to get out of the way of his pride quite a bit. And I'm glad he still got to stay true to himself and stuff when he moved out. But, like, oh, I was waiting for that to happen. Stop hurting my child. I was so sad that they killed Persephone. I mean, I'm glad that she died versus one of the guys, or Blue, but, like, that, I was not expecting that. I was not expecting that. I should have been expecting that, because it's Maggie Stiefvater. But I wasn't expecting that. I found it interesting how Ronan worked into that whole series, and how he kind of was like he was dreaming things into being. That was a really interesting plot point to come up with, and I liked the air of unpredictability that it had. I did feel like, especially the last book, it got to be a little too much about Ronan, in my opinion. Like, I liked Ronan, but he was not my favorite, so obviously that frustrated me. Okay, so there are two reasons I didn't like the Raven King as much. One of the reasons is, like, you set up at the beginning of this series that Gansey is going to die, and then you set up the fact that they are keeping this secret from him, okay? And I get that he, like, figured it out on his own. Of course he figured this out. This kid has figured out so much other stuff. Like, you had him figuring out at the very beginning of Raven King, like in the first 3 pages, I guess. And then you have Blue going, I'm going to tell him about that. And then you never have a confrontation about it. Like, he had 2 very good friends keeping this secret from him, this life-changing secret from him, and there was no confrontation. I wanted that confrontation. The other reason I didn't like the Raven King as much as I liked books 2 and 3 is because I felt like the ending sort of fell flat. She introduced this new concept of him not being the ley line rebuilding him, and, like, we didn't really get a chance. I just would have liked a little more in that epilogue, but in general, I would have just liked more of Blue and Gansey in the Raven King, because I didn't feel like they had a lot of time together, and Margaret is all about that romance. I like that we had a family dynamic in this. I like that we got to see her mom, that we got to see Calla and Persephone, and Jimmy and Orla drove her nuts. Orla drove me nuts too, sweetie. Oh, the Camaro Wheel! Like, why would you put that in a book and not deliver on it? Like, ah! How did it get there? Why was it 500 years old? I was expecting there to be some time travel in this, and then there was no time travel. And I know we didn't have time for it, but still. I did like the fact that Glendower was dead. That was fantastic. Oh, Whatsherface? Glendower's daughter, whose name I don't remember how to pronounce. She was hilarious. I just love the idea of her being up in the tree. And then she has that huge nest of hair. That was hilarious. But I love the fact that Glendower was dead. The fact that Glendower was just, like, dead when they found him, that kind of made it, like, obviously it was not about the destination, it was about the journey. The search for Glendower brought to his life was the point, and not necessarily finding this mythical king. I mean, I was expecting them to find the mythical king and be able to ask for Gansey's life. But I was intrigued by the fact that they didn't. I thought that was actually really cool, because it would have been too easy. I mean, you could have come up with the crappiest reason for Gansey to not die or to not stay dead. I remember when she tweeted, when the Raven King was coming out, I remember when Maggie Stiefvater tweeted that Gansey was definitely going to die in the Raven King. And me, being a comic book reader, was like, she did not say he was going to stay dead, though. So, spoiler alert, Gansey doesn't stay dead. You could have come up with the crappiest reason for him to not be dead, and I would not have cared, because I didn't want him dead. Like, I didn't want him to stay dead. No. Any of the other boys could have died, and I would have been like, whatever. Okay, fine, but not my child. yeah, that's pretty much, I think that's pretty much everything I want to talk about. I enjoyed it. I'm really glad that I got this swift kick in the pants that I needed to read this series, because I definitely needed to have read this series a long time ago. I'm kind of sad I missed out on a lot of the hype, but then again, I had all 4 books and did not have to suffer through waiting for the next one. That's all for now, folks. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. I would love to see you guys down in the comments. I love talking about books with people, so if you go down there and you comment about something you liked about the series, something you didn't like about the series, I am sure to see it and chime in. I will see you later when we will talk about more wordy, nerdy things. Bye! I know this is the wrong franchise, but I am a Ravenclaw, and there is a raven on this, even though that's not my house mascot, but you know, we're not gonna get into